Hello and welcome to episode 67 of the Green Arrow and FPL podcast by Fantasy Football Hub. My name is Fergie, and a big welcome to my very excitable co-host, Adam Hopcroft. I had my whole speech lined up around, what do you think about Grealish leaving and all this and all that? And then what do we get? 5 minutes before we go live on air, Danny Ings signs for Aston Villa. What is that all about, mate?
I'm as surprised as you. I think what a roller coaster of a week it's been. I think any Villa fan will tell you that it's been, quite a draining week. We've seen Jack was definitely going. Then he was training for us. And we thought maybe, we are going to keep him. By all accounts, we've done everything we could to keep him. Obviously, now he's signed. But I think what Villa did really well, the timing of the Bailey announcement on Saturday was great, because I think a lot of Villa fans were a bit down on the dumps about Jack. And then the timing of this, it couldn't be better. What was it? A couple of minutes, 15 minutes before on air, I was as shocked as anyone. There wasn't a sniff of any reporter. And I think Villa in general are exceptional at keeping their business quiet.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they've announced Bailey and Ings before any reporters confirmed that bids have been accepted is great work from Villa. And I think, I don't know the price details on Ings, but effectively we've got Buendia, Ings and Bailey in replacement for Grealish. And Grealish is world class. I wish him all the best at City. Best player I've seen at Villa. And I think on that move, he probably does need to play Champions League football, and I think he'll go on to show the world just how good a player he is. And, I expect him to be, one of the players of the season. So I think City have got an absolutely great player, but Villa definitely aren't lacking ambition. And I think there'll be a couple of other big signings to come as well. So really, really excited and ecstatic and in a much better mood than I was half an hour ago.
What does it mean for Villa now, though? So what does it mean for highly owned Ollie Watkins? That's the question on everyone's lips.
Well,
because he's in my draft. He's in my team at the moment.
Yeah, I think logically, I would expect Watkins, Ings, Buendia and Bailey to be in the starting lineup. I think, and I think they will be in our first team. Dean Smith has very rarely played two up front, so I don't see that happening. I think the most logical thing for me is Buendia will play as a 10. Bailey's best coming off the right, which means Watkins will play as a wide forward on the left, which a lot of people are maybe concerned with that. I actually think it will suit him, and I think he might even get more goals than last season from that position. It's not harmed players like Salah and Mane and Sterling, has it really? And he might get a little bit more space. And I think Ings will obviously play as the 9, but it's a squad game as well. And no doubt Ings or any of the others will get injured at some points in the season. So yeah, absolutely great sign. I think he'll take our pens as well. I think that, someone asked on Twitter who will take pens earlier.
He will, 100%.
Ings will definitely take them now. Yeah, got no doubt about that. So yeah,
Ings in.
Well, he's 8 million, isn't he? And
he's only half a million more than Watkins, and he's guaranteed to be on penalties.
Yeah, 4% owned, and I know I shouldn't let emotion clash with FPL. And actually, I was quite settled on what my plans were. They've just gone completely out the window.
Crazy.
I find it very hard not to start with Danny Ings. And I hope he's involved this weekend against Sevilla, because I'm taking my son up to his first proper game. So, yeah, really, really excited.
I need you to try and find 500,000 from somewhere. I need to find 1 million now after that, I think. Because, obviously we'll have to see, if he's played much in pre-season, if it looks like he's going to be starting in game week 1, but incredible signing, and well done Villa. They're doing their business. Incredible stuff. For any new watchers and listeners, you are very, very welcome. If you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and set the alerts so you don't miss our live streams, which from next week, big news, will be 7 p.m. every Tuesday evening right here on this channel. We've had a chat with the Black Spot guys, and we're going to try and avoid clashes. So we're going to do a Tuesday, they're going to do a Wednesday. happy days all around. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. It would be much appreciated. As we are live, please feel free to join in the chat at any time. Let us know your thoughts on the topics of the relevant sections, and feel free to ask some questions throughout. Today we're going to be talking about the best players to own, so please feel free to throw some players in there. Ings is all over the chat, as you can imagine, but welcome Siddharth Suresh, Purple, Chris Smith, John Chappell, Oliver Asht, Obi Evans, Akshat, Tom Zaraski, who was on this afternoon. I did a stream this afternoon, and Tom, you were on. You are dedicated. Good stuff. Varun, Chris Smith, Victor Anderson, Michael Brooker, many more. Thank you so much all for joining us. Just before we kick off, we should let our watchers and listeners know that if you haven't already signed up to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, there's currently a pre-season 25% discount link at the top of the description below. Members get unlimited access to all our tools, including Opta stats, comparison tools, points prediction tools, Game Week 1 team reveals from the very best FPL managers in the world, masses of fantasy football content, and basically everything you could ever need to become a better fantasy football manager and dominate your mini leagues. If my internet starts to potentially go a tiny bit with it, there has been a massive Sky internet issue all over the country today, so apologies for that if I start to lag a bit, or if the stream stops, we will come back on and sort it out. Anyway, Adam, so after last week's episode, we discussed team selection and season strategy. We will now get up to our knees in FPL player mud as we trawl through the positions, trying to pull out our favourite options, budget gems, and differentials. We will also share our latest drafts with you. We're going to use some stats, but they're more as prompts than anything else, because last season's stats are probably not that relevant at this point, but could still hold, a little bit of value. For all the stats we show this evening, we decided on a cut of the final quarter of the season, so the last 9 game weeks of the season. The stats will show. But firstly, we're going to show just a quick reminder of the fixtures from the fixture ticker from Fantasy Football Hub during the first 6 games, which shows Brighton had the best first 6 games, according to the ticker. Man United have the second best 6 games, then Everton, then Watford, then Liverpool. Down the bottom, according to the ticker, Chelsea, even though they started with Palace, have the worst 6 games overall, followed by Norwich, Palace, and then Spurs. So firstly, Adam, does anything, kind of stick out in the fixtures? Firstly, I think for me, Brighton at home. Brighton at home. Brighton's first 6, even though they're nice, they're still Brighton. I'm maybe not as excited as anyone else about them personally. But does anything stick out for you in the fixtures?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say, and I think by putting the first 6 fixtures on, I think that's probably about the right number of fixtures to target. And as we said last week, I'd probably weight the first 3 of those 6 a little bit higher than the 3 after that, because it could be that, you decide you're going to wild card, you get so much information from those first 3 or 4 game weeks as well. So I think in terms of the fixtures, the things that I would say are, I think Brighton have got good fixtures, which they're obviously top of the ticker. And I don't really get excited by any of their attacking assets. But I think defensively, if Dunk is fit, if Webster's fit, and, I think Sanchez had a knock, but I think he's okay. I think there's some options there defensively. I think Liverpool as well. I think other than the Chelsea game, I think they've got a really good 6 fixtures, as have United. So they're probably the ones that really stand out for me. Villa have got a good first 3. And I think, who else have we got? West Ham's fixtures are okay as well. And they seem to be knocking along okay in pre-season. I think West Ham have got some good differential options as well, I think. So, yeah, I think that's probably it for me. I'm a little bit put off by Arsenal's fixtures just because of the first, but it's not the first one, but they play Chelsea and Man City. So players like Smith Rowe are great value, but I might look to bring them in on wild card rather than right at the start.
Yeah.
And I feel, and the one thing I would say is I think Chelsea have got really tough fixtures, but as they've shown, and particularly defensively, I think they're fixture proof. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that. My worry would be rotation more than the actual fixtures.
Yeah, no, I agree.
What are your thoughts looking at the fixtures?
I'm surprised that not many seem to be tripling up on Liverpool or Man United, because I think you probably don't get much of a better six fixtures for both teams, in the way that FPL managers kind of generally are. We tend to be quite fickle, don't we? And see a big run of fixtures. Everyone's eyeing up that Chelsea game week 7. Triple up on Chelsea, but why aren't we tripling up on Liverpool? Or Man United in game week 1? It may be obviously because they've got like Salah and Bruno, right? Are obviously very, very expensive. Trent is very expensive as well, but I haven't seen many teams that have tripled up. I haven't seen many with Salah and Mane, which historically when Liverpool have this awesome run of fixtures, you've seen that before. I do wonder whether that is because of Mane's form last year, but Mane, I was going to mention him later, but I couldn't believe his ownership when I checked. Have you seen his ownership, Adam?
Mane's, no, but I'm guessing it's fairly low.
Well, I checked yesterday and it was 3.4%, and I could not believe my eyes when I saw it.
Okay,
but go on.
But would you? You've got to bear in mind, almost most people are going to have Salah, and I think a lot of people will see the choice of Salah versus Mane.
I don't think it has to be Salah versus Mane, though.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't. I think.
Oh, sorry, you go on.
It doesn't have to be. I agree with that, but there's two problems with having Salah and Mane. Number one, well, they both relate to captaincy. Number one, you've got that choice every week: do a captain Salah or do a captain Mane, particularly if, say, Mane had a great start against Norwich. You're going to have that debate all week: who do I go for? Having owned both at the same time. The other thing as well is when you look at the captaincy matrix, they both play Chelsea in game week 3, and I think Leeds away could be a tricky game. So I just think with your big hitters, when you're paying 12 odd million, you're better off having them from different teams, purely because it solves the captaincy problem. I do agree with you. I think stats wise, I think Mane underperformed last season. I don't think he will this year, but I think when Diogo Jota's in there as well for a fraction of the price,
yeah.
I can see the logic why people haven't gone Mane, because most people will see I'm looking at Liverpool's fit, I'll go for either Salah or Mane.
Just on
that's what I think. Anyway.
Just on Jota, so I think Klopp confirmed earlier that Firmino is going to play in a friendly tomorrow night, which kind of
interesting.
Yeah, it is because I did have Jota in my draft this week, but after that news, I'm a bit. And I'm sure I also saw I was tagged in something earlier. I didn't read it properly because I was rushing, but I'm sure it said that Cavani hasn't played much in pre-season, and may not be ready for game week 1, which kind of leads, with those two bits of information, I'm actually wondering whether Greenwood could actually be a really good option now. But we'll know. It's I think at this stage it's just keeping those price points open and then filling them when you've got the latest information.
I think 7.5 midfielder is a good price point because it allows you. It's easier to get up to the likes of Havertz, and then if you just got go from a midfield of 2 12 million players and 2 6 million players, it's just that makes it a little bit more difficult. So I do think it gives more flexibility, and I agree with you. I was really debating between Jota and Greenwood, and I've been favouring Jota because I've liked watching him play for Portugal. His expected stats are right up there, particularly per 90. But I think the news that you've mentioned on Firmino, it does put me off a little bit. So yeah, we'll see. Still a little bit of time to go anyway on that.
Gavinho 99 in the chat. Surely Keenan Davis gets some game time in game week 1 as Danny Ings won't be quite match sharp.
He's unfortunately, Keenan Davis has got a bad injury, which has prevented his loan to Stoke.
Is he really?
So, yeah, his ownership at the moment, I checked it earlier, was about 8 or 9%, which is quite high, I thought. So I think that's your influence for saying he's one of the greatest players of all time. You've caused that.
He is.
So but I think unfortunately he's got quite a bad injury. So
is that unfortunate or fortunate though? Because if he doesn't go to Stoke, he remains an option in the game, and I can have him on my bench all season. So I see that as a positive.
You're not gonna do that though, are you? Because you might want to triple up on Villa. I mean, come on, you're probably going to want
Triple up on
Ings,
Villa. Don't get too excited, Adam. Flipping.
I mean, Bailey at 6.5, actually,
We'll see.
maybe not to start with because he's not had a pre-season, but he could be a really good option.
Just in terms of the other, fixtures, I think Leeds fixtures, after the initial United game, they've got Everton, Burnley, Liverpool, Newcastle, and West Ham, which I think attacking wise are not that bad. Bamford was only 18% owned, which I was quite surprised. I think he's been slightly ignored because of the price point that Rafinha is obviously at 6.5. People have all jumped on Rafinha because he represents incredible value there and solves that fourth midfielder spot. But I do think Bamford at 18%. His stats, his performances, everything from last year was absolutely fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, I can't get too excited about Brighton, and I can understand maybe someone having one, so having Sanchez in goals or having maybe Veltman, but I've seen double ups and stuff, and I just think taking fixtures are kind of a bit too literally there, so I can't get too excited about Brighton. And I was just looking at Watford's because they're quite high up, but their first three games are actually Villa, away to Brighton, and then they got Spurs. But it's their next three, which are nice. So I can't, again, the whole Backman thing. I can't get excited. And just touching on that, actually, let's just start on keepers. And and you're gonna be pleased with this, mate, because I keep flip flopping. Well, I was between Sanchez and Martinez, wherever, and is he worth the extra million? I just cannot get away from Emi Martinez. I just think he is just a set and forget. I think he's the best keeper option by an absolute mile, personally. So just for those looking now on YouTube, so these are the Opta stats for expected points per game for the final quarter of the season. They're just there as a bit of a prompt. And actually, Martinez isn't on here because Villa didn't end the season tremendously well, clean sheet wise. But Martinez for me is the one. Who is your number one pick in goal at the moment, Adam?
Sanchez, and there's a couple of reasons why. I looked at this and I thought, it's just quite interesting. It's probably right because Villa defensively weren't as great towards the end of the season. I then used, because we're both big fans of the expected data stats on Fantasy Football Hub, accessible only for members. And what I actually looked at the whole season and looked per 90. Not that it makes too much difference for keepers. And Sanchez was 3.8 points per 90. Yeah. Martinez was 3.9 in terms of expected points. So I think there isn't much in it in their fixtures. And the price is a big factor when it comes to goalkeepers, particularly at the start of the season. I don't really want to spend that extra million because I might need it. Or in fact, I say I might need it. I want to spend that on my forward players or the players that could get attacking returns. So that's my thought process at the moment. Is I probably like Sanchez. I think there's other options. I think the 5 million bracket's quite interesting, actually. But just before that, I think Batman's a good option, but I think I'll wait and see how Watford adapt. So he could be a wild card option, possibly.
Yeah.
Because I've heard good things on him and Watford defensively, but I think that's a wait and see. But I don't know if you've looked at the 5 million bracket. I think there's some really good options there. I
think Henderson was a good option. I'm assuming De Gea is 5 as well, but okay. So Henderson, he's gonna miss a start of the season. With COVID now, so De Gea will likely start. You don't want to be making transfers right a couple of weeks, and I think a keeper is the one spot in your team where you don't want to be wondering if your keeper's going to start. Right, you just want kind of set and forget. So I think I'd leave that alone. Meslier, I think, is a decent option.
I do too.
Their short-term fixtures, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Bamford, aren't the best. He makes lots of saves. They definitely tightened up towards the back end of the season. So Meslier is fourth on this list overall for expected points with 3.8 points. The same as Alisson. So I do think he is a good option. It's just like more of a gut thing than anything else, but clean sheets and leads for me last season just didn't seem to go hand in hand, which is why I'm kind of, I don't mind paying the extra $500,000 for Martinez for that security, or probably going down to Sanchez, with that, you mentioned earlier about the expected point stat, the saving of $1 million. I would rather go very, very safe with Martinez or cheap budget. I don't see the point in going in between personally. Pickford, is Pickford 5? I think
Pickford's
he's 5.
yeah.
So he was like 8% owned. Everyone's waxing lyrical about Everton defence and under Benitez and fixtures. I think he could be okay to start off with. And
the other one I like is Kasper Schmeichel.
Okay.
And because Leicester typically over the last few seasons have started very well. And I think indeed he's fit, isn't he? And I think he's quite key to their defence. So I quite like Schmeichel at 5 million. And I think he tends to do. Leicester the last couple of seasons have had a really good first half of the season and dipped off. So I think he's quite good on bonus as well. So he's somebody that I would consider. But if I'm being honest at the moment, I showed my team last week and had some locked players in. Sanchez hasn't moved. The only thing that would stop me picking him is either injured or dropped for the final friendly, or we get concrete news that Dunk and Webster aren't going to make the start of the season. I might rethink things then, but I just think 4.5 million for a really solid Brighton defence and with good fixtures is overthinking it going elsewhere, in my opinion.
You might be right. I may be trying to, go a bit, a little bit too safe, and that million, especially now we've got the Ings news, for example, that million could go a long, long way. So on the screen now, I've done a comparison again for the final quarter of the season. Martinez against Sanchez. There's not much in it. In all fairness, Martinez tended to make more saves, whereas Sanchez had higher expected clean sheets and actual clean sheets. But like we say, this data, it's not sort of massively important, because obviously it's last season. We want to look ahead to this season, but it just shows a comparison there. And actually, you may have changed my mind on Sanchez. You don't change my mind very often, Adam, but I think you may have changed my mind on Sanchez there.
What I would say is, if you combine at the start, just for the start of the season, I'm not saying long term Martinez might end up being a better pick, but for the start of the season, let's say you've got 2 spots left, a goalkeeper and a striker, a goalkeeper and a midfielder. It might come down to either go in Pookie or I don't even know who 7 million for, but it gives you. I think it gives you a decent enough upgrade. I'm not saying Martinez might get more points, but I think I'd prefer to spend the money further forward at this stage.
Okay, so let's take a look now at defenders. Then I think we've talked long enough around the whole Sanchez versus Martinez, and what we've got here on the data shows again expected points for the last 9 game weeks. Chilwell, over the last 9 game weeks of the season, quite surprised me actually. Absolutely smashed the expected points with 5.7, way ahead of anyone else. So Evans was next for Leicester. So you mentioned Leicester defence earlier. There are a couple of Leicester defenders in here as well, Adam, for the final quarter of the season. Evans was second with 5.1, Rudiger 4.6, Trent, Dunk, Zuma, Reece James, Castagna, Soyuncu, and Burns. So quite a lot of Leicester and Chelsea in there. Chilwell, I've got to say, I had it. You do your very first draft. He was in there. He was in my team, but I'm struggling to be able to justify having him, because it means that I just can't squeeze that extra $500,000 or $1 million, kind of where I want him in field. And long term, I want him in because I think he's going to have another sensational season. But I'm struggling at the moment. Who's your kind of favourite defender in the whole game at the moment? Let's exclude Trent, because I'm assuming he's number one.
I just think it's too risky not to have Trent, so I'm going to
completely agree.
I looked at this. I expanded the same data over the whole season, and what's really interesting is the top 10 defenders over the whole season all come from 2 teams. Any guesses? Which two teams over the whole season? This is expected points per match.
Expected points.
So yeah, they're all the top 10 defenders all came from two teams.
I would guess it's Chelsea and Man City.
Absolutely spot on, yeah. And so Cancelo was top over the whole season, and I think even when you're looking at the data and you're looking more at I think Man City sort of faded away, didn't they, towards the end of the season? But I think Chelsea defense do interest me, but I'm not. Chilwell would be the one, or James would, they would be the ones that I would want. And I'm just not confident in them starting the first game, which puts me off because I wouldn't want a rotation when I've got, So I just think the risk with everybody, other than maybe Rudiger and Diaz, there's rotation risks all around there, and I think there's probably defenders with more of an attacking threat and maybe better fixtures at 5.5 million, which is what Rudiger is.
I think the 5.5 bracket is just unbelievable this season, and I think all these should have been 6. I think Luca Dean should have been 6. Agreed. Luke Shaw should have been 6, because at the moment it's reasonably straightforward to, if you can get in 3, basically what should be premium defenders and 2 premium midfielders, there's something wrong, right? But we can do it reasonably easily, I think.
I'm finding it hard to think of logical reasons not to go. I think when I'm just looking at a logic and keeping it simple, I think Trent is a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean, you could argue, I say it's no-brainer, you could argue that, like you were saying about Salah and versus Mane, Robertson, I think, outscored in the last couple of seasons. We should probably balance the argument for 500,000 less. Would we be surprised in the first 5 to 10 game weeks if Robertson outscored Trent? I wouldn't, but I think Trent finished the season in beast mode. He's obviously had a bit of a rest, and I think he'll have a little bit of a point to prove. So I think Trent's set for me. I think the other 2 spots, Luke Shaw, particularly the way he played in Euros, the fact his ownership will be huge because of his at United, he's on set pieces. I think sometimes he was a little bit, because I don't know, I owned him for quite a bit of the end of last season, and he did frustrate at times where he's a little bit unlucky, and whilst he creates a lot of chances, he doesn't create a lot of high quality chances. Yeah. So that's, but I think, like you said, 5.5 is a really good price for him. It's just like in a way, it's almost too obvious to go for those two players. And then I think Luca Dean, they've got a more defensively minded manager. Both of their set piece takers are, in terms of James Rodriguez and Gylfi Sigurdsson, it doesn't look like are going to be involved. They've got, a big focal point in Calvert-Lewin. So for me, that points to Luca Dean. They're quite obvious ones, and I think the 3 of them you would expect, particularly with Tellers' injury as well, to be nailed. So you almost don't, you could probably get away up until wild card without even having a sub defender.
Nailed attacking fullbacks who take set pieces for top 6 or 8 teams. I mean, you only get one of them, right? And we've got like 3, or 4 with Creswell.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think Soufal's better than Creswell personally. That's my own opinion. I think I've been really impressed with his, particularly watching him in the Euros as well. His crossing is excellent, particularly, and he gets so forward in open play. So I think Soufal is an option as well. So maybe if you couldn't afford one of those, you're 0.5 million short. I couldn't argue against him, but I just think defensively the other teams might be a little bit better. So they're probably the 4 in my mind at the moment. I think as the season progresses, I'm more likely to go into the Chelsea and City defence. I would say.
A few other ones who I do like the look of Matt Target and Matty Cash. They're both at 5 million. I thought they, especially Target, I thought he looked very, very attacking last season. I think they look really good. I did look at Leicester's.
Just whilst we're talking about Matt Target, The only thing I would be wary of, he hasn't started yet, I don't think, in pre-season, and I think Ashley Young's been
Yeah, I
quite
saw
good.
that. Yeah,
And I don't know. I would expect Target to be first choice, and I'd be surprised. It would be a bit unfair if he wasn't. But I think he's had a few knocks, and I wouldn't be 100% shocked if Young started there in the season and Target was phased in. I think long-term Target will be the left back. And Matty Cash, you're right, really good option. He's been practicing his free kicks as well. He's got a great delivery. The only thing I don't like about him, he likes a yellow card, and that just puts me off a little bit. But I think with Bailey cutting inside, I think I think out of the two, Matt Cash is a better option. I would probably go go there, but I think it's a good shout.
And the other team I looked at was Leicester, but Leicester's fullbacks. Look at the options. So there's been a few shouts in the chat for Ricardo Pereira, but Pereira is going to be up against Castagna, and also Luke Thomas finished the season very, very well in replacement for James Justin, and they've also signed Ryan Bertrand as well. So I think it's very, very tough to call who's actually going to start. I do think when we know who the kind of nailed Leicester left back and right back is, I think they could offer really good value, but it's impossible to call at the moment who's actually going to start for me, which is a real shame. But yeah,
I think Castagna could be a good option. I think Pereira's had his injury troubles. I think I would guess out the four, and actually towards the end of the season, Castagna, he's on this chart, isn't he?
Castagna
looked really good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So it could be. I mean, he has decent attacking threat. So if you're wanting something different to maybe Luke Shaw, who you're not convinced on, or Luca Dean, I do think Castagna could be one to consider. As a different player, and he could easily outscore either of those players.
Fofana, now that it looks like Evans is going to miss the start of the season, I wasn't very hot on Fofana, but I do think now at 4.5, I think he's a really good option to have maybe on your bench. You could start him if you're playing
first
a cheap
up,
one.
yeah.
But I would also say, obviously, like Ings has gone, right, so we're gonna have to find that extra whatever $500,000 from somewhere, right? But if this Kane transfer goes through, if this Lukaku transfer goes through, if this Grealish transfers go through, we could find by this time next week, it's all very well now saying about, being spoilt for choice with Trent and Robertson and Shaw and Digne, but it's because at the moment there's no real premium striker must-have, is there? There could be by this time next week, and I think that's why it's good to shout out these 4.5s and stuff now, because we may have to find that we may have to downgrade, one or two, and we could even end up with Trent a load of 4.5s, right? Because it's the only way to then afford all these players. But we'll see. And this and to your point, Adam, and I think you're absolutely right. The point you made a couple of weeks ago is just remain inflexible. And I think that what I've tried to do is when I'm building my team, and I'm streaming now every day on this channel. If you've missed it, streaming at 3 p.m. BST every single day on this channel, doing like answering questions, looking at drafts, looking at my own team. Every time I make a move, I'm always thinking about the price points and always thinking about the kind of structure, and that's helped me a lot actually, because I did dig myself into a bit of a hole last season, kind of structure wise. Just some other defenders looked at. I agree with you on Soufal at 5 million. I think he's currently in my draft actually. He had 9 assists last year, and their fixtures are decent. I think he's he's the best value option there. Veltman we've mentioned. Loughton, he's okay. This Livramento has gone to Southampton, could potentially be a 4 million starter, one for the bench maybe. Just a couple of really, really low owned ones. So Tyreek Mitchell finished the season well. Van Aanholt has left now, so Mitchell's definitely going to start. He's 1.2% owned. I think he said last week in the press actually that the manager Vieira said he wants him to really, really get forward and attack. So Mitchell could prove really good value. Firpo for Leeds. I don't know if anyone saw his goal his assist he had last week for Bamford, but looks very, very attacking. Very low, 1.4% owned Firpo. So if he nails down that spot, he's 5 million, so I wouldn't start with him, but he's definitely one to look out for. And the only other one that I don't know if it's like a bit of nostalgia, but the only one I've got my eye on, because we don't know how Spurs are going to set up, right? We just don't know. But Doherty at 5 million, he's only 1% owned at the moment. Spurs play 5 times in August because they've got that, that Europa Conference qualifying round as well. I think we'll get a really, really good look and understanding of how Spurs are going to play, and he could be fantastic.
Do you think he's a wait and see?
Oh yes, definitely. I wouldn't start with him. If he was a 4.5, I'd say maybe we're sticking him in, but not for 5 million. We're getting asked to price up Lukaku. What do you think if Lukaku came into the game? You're a bit more experienced in this with me, Adam. What do you think?
It's really difficult. I would say 11 million if I was going to guess, but I think it wouldn't be. I think 11 million at least is what I would say.
Yeah, I would personally, if I was pricing him, I'd price him higher because he's going to be the number 9 for the European champions, right? So I'd probably price him. I'd probably stick him at 12, knowing that Kane is 12 and a half, is he? And Bruno is 12. I think that round about that, in terms of potential point scoring, could be absolutely incredible.
What would you prefer out of Kane at City or Lukaku at Chelsea? What do you think is the better option?
I think it's it still has to be Kane. I think Kane is the best striker in the world, and I'm a Spurs fan, so I'm biased, but I just can't see anyone, in terms of pure out and out striker. I think Kane, everything Kane does, he very, very rarely gives the ball away, makes a mistake, misses big chances. He's a team player. His passing is phenomenal. He gets back, he helps out. His finishing, penalties, everything you could want from a number 9. And Luke,
whilst I wouldn't dispute that at all. I think I would agree, and obviously it would depend on prices. My worry if Kane goes to City is if you look at the array of attacking options that they've got, and I think the Champions League will be important to them. I don't know if he'll be as talismanic he won't be as he is at Spurs, but I think Lukaku could be more of a talisman at Chelsea. Yeah. And I've actually been more impressed since he went to Inter. I think he's raised his game, and I think particularly seems he's one of the best in the world. And we don't always see it as much as him as we have as Kane, but I don't think there's that much in it between them. And I think Chelsea will probably have to play. I think Lukaku will be more key to winning Chelsea the title because they've struggled for goals a little bit at times last season. So yeah, I think I'd probably favour Lukaku, but I mean, there's a lot of ifs and buts at the moment, and if Kane is nailed and everything's going through him, then that could all change. Yeah. But you just look at City's options.
I do. But I think that Kane,
mad, isn't it, the options?
But Aguero was starting every week when Aguero was the main man, right? So I just think they've lacked that main man. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, very true.
Their spine. They've got Edison, Diaz, and De Bruyne. When they're fit, they play every game because they're the main man. In that spot. I think the Kane would be the same. But I think he'd insist. I think he would absolutely insist that he plays every game he's available for, really, because he's proven time and again he can. I'm getting a bit of stick in the chat actually because I said that Kane is the best striker in the world. Okay, Lewandowski, I understand that. I can't think of many more that you could argue. It's very difficult to say I'm wrong as well because it's a very subjective thing, right? But anyway.
It was quite hypothetical. And obviously it's a bit unfair to throw Danny Ings into the conversation because we all know that.
We all know Ollie Watkins is the best striker in the world anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Keenan Davis as well. Don't forget it.
I hope everyone has noted we haven't had one comment yet, Adam, about your new audio setup. We spent an absolute bloody fortune on sorting your audio out. It's incredible.
That's a good sign because last week the whole podcast was interrupted in the chat. We started 3 or 4 times. So yeah, it's yeah. I think it's gone okay so far.
It has.
No comments is good news.
No comments. Just got to remember to speak into the mic still like every now and then. John Chapel says Haaland, okay. He got a lot of potential. I'm joking. Obviously, he is. He's absolutely fantastic, and I've got no doubt he will become the best player in the world. What was I going to say? I was going to make a point that it was something. I've lost it. I completely lost it. Anyway, so we've got a graphic up now showing just Digne versus Shaw. And this just shows how good Luca Dean was. At the end of last season. Again, it's the final quarter of last season. Man United didn't keep a lot of clean sheets in the season. Luke Shaw was a bit of a letdown, but Luca Dean outscored Luke Shaw in every stat. FPL wise, so I think that I think Luca Dean. I always think I've owned him a few times, and he's always flattered to deceive for me. He's always he got lots of crosses in. He just missed a free kick. He just wide a header off one of his corners. But I do think that he's got the potential to get a few 12 pointers this season.
The great thing with Shaw, Trent, and Dean is they're all on set pieces. They've all got good fixtures, and you'd expect the clean sheet. So I at the moment it's a bit of a no-brainer, and I'm thinking when I look at reasons not to get them, it is to think how good City are defensively, think how good Chelsea are defensively, but then you think who's nailed there and have they got the same attacking threat? You think the ceiling on these 3 players is fairly high.
Agree. You think you'd get a couple of 12 pointers out of them, right? Little bit in the chat they're saying Ramanathan says, what about Che Adams? I'm assuming we're not talking about the best strikers in the world. Robbie Glynn, are we all just forgetting about Keenan Davis? How can you forget about Keenan Davis? And James Hardin, who I met the other week at the FPL meetup, Evening James, says, shocking Fergie, we all know Kane is number 2 behind Keenan Davis. Akshad said, if we don't talk about wicket keepers and audio setup, wicket keepers? Where's that come from? It means they are doing just fine. Fantastic. Yes, a lot of chat around who's the best striker in the world. Let us know who. I want to know your 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because I bet you very few will be the same. Everyone's like, oh, it's obvious it's so and so. It's obvious it's Lewandowski. It's obvious it's Ronaldo. It's obvious it's whatever. It's not bloody obvious when you write down 1, 2, 3, because we won't get many the same. I don't think personally. Adam, so what we've got on screen now, just done a very ropey captaincy matrix, a very brief knocked up captaincy matrix, just to show, because obviously as we move into midfielders and forwards, captaincy is something which is absolutely key to the decisions we make when picking these players. For game week 1, I've picked out Salah as the best pick. I've only seen one draft I think in the last month that hasn't got Salah in. Bruno second against Leeds. In game week 2, Salah again home to Burnley, you would think would probably be the overwhelming captain there. The only one who could maybe challenge him is if Kane has moved to that point to Norwich. We know, to Man City, we know he's going to start because he'd be home to Norwich, right? But Salah home to Burnley. Game week 3 is the interesting one because no matter where Kane ends up, Spurs are home to Watford and Man City have got they're home to Arsenal, so that is a good fixture. Salah will have Chelsea, Bruno is away to Wolves, and Watkins and Antonio have decent fixtures. That's the one kind of tricky game week at the moment. Game week 4, Bruno is very likely the best captain, or a United player, home to Newcastle, while Salah's away to Leeds. In game week 5 and 6, then Salah has Palace and Brentford. So this is why we can understand why everyone is going for Salah, right? He's the standout option in 4 of those opening 6 fixtures. However, in those 3rd and 4th ones, it looks like Bruno or Kane. So just with this in mind, and one of the questions that I've got for you, and it's it's the burning question at the moment in the whole FPL community, right? We're assuming Kane is going to City, or even if he stays at Spurs, we haven't factored Lukaku. That's kind of something else to think about, right? But having 2 premiums, do you go, is it Bruno or Brew Yes? In terms of, if you spread the funds you can have from Bruno, you can make one hell of a team. But it's very hard then to jump on that second premium in 1 or 2 moves without either wildcarding or taking massive hits. I'll take a breath now, Adam. Sorry. What are your thoughts on that whole premium captain scenario which we're finding ourselves in?
For me, I'm trying not to overthink it, because I think sometimes things are quite obvious and you can overcomplicate the decision. So where my head's at the moment, and I'm sure there's counter arguments to this, is that I think you need to have 12 million players or 12.5 million players in your squad. Yeah. And I think when you spread the funds, you lose flexibility. Yeah. So straight away, I'm going to have 12 million or 12.5 million players in my squad. And I think there's only 5 players at that thing. Now, for me, it was Mane or Salah. So I've gone with Salah. And I don't think you have them at the same club, because then you've got no captaincy rotation. So that rules out Mane for me. I think at the moment, I do actually think De Bruyne is an option, and instead of Bruno, if you wanted to go that way. But again, City are going to have a lot of players that, fighting for points, fighting for starts, etc. I don't think Kane's in the equation yet, because he's in Florida at the moment. He's not showing any signs of coming back soon by the looks of it. So even if he gets back, he's had no trade. I think his match fitness, and I think he might take a while to get going. So even if he has moved to City for the Norwich game, I'd be a little bit worried about his sharpness, and he might take a while to get going. And will he get 90 minutes? So I wouldn't disrupt my team for that.
Yeah, it's not a bad show.
I'd probably still trust Salah and Bruno. So I think for me at the moment, based on what we know, it is Salah, De Bruyne, and Bruno.
Not Mane.
But I think purely because I think Salah's a better option, and I want to have 2 from different teams. Okay. That's my logic, and I'm not changing my mind on that. So for me, it comes down to pre-season, and I think Fernandes and Salah. Fernandes went out the Euros a little bit earlier. He's had more of a pre-season. Salah's had fairly decent pre-season, and I think that's a really big factor for me, because I'm factoring really heavily on the first 3 or 4 games. So it could take De Bruyne a little bit longer to get going, and also he'll be competing for points with a lot of other players. Now, I think De Bruyne is a good option, so I don't want to, but for me, it's Brew, yes, and it's pretty easy decision as well. Salah and Bruno, as I showed in my draft last week, they're fixed in. It will take a lot for me to be dissuaded. Otherwise, I think I've seen all the stuff on penalties. Do you know what? Man United get penalties. There is naturally a bias from officials towards them ever since the Premier League started. With fans back in the stadium, that will carry on. United will get 10 plus penalties there or thereabouts this season.
I don't know about you. I think when he takes a penalty, does he scare you to death when he takes a penalty because it looks like he's not going to score?
No, I don't. I'd never worry about Bruno.
With Kane, when Kane runs up, I know he's going to score. Right? I think I know he's missed he missed one in the Euros, but when Bruno does his, because he stands very very centrally, doesn't he? And he does this stupid hop, skip, and jump, and I'm like, oh my goodness, but because he missed one, didn't he? When I had him captain, and they made him retake it, and he scored it. That was a hairy moment. Anyway, mate, so I've just gone right off of the tangent there.
No, it's fine. The point for me with United, and say this in jest a little bit, but the fact they got a penalty after 90 minutes just says it all. Because it against Brighton last season, I just think so. I don't worry too much about that, and I actually think with Sancho coming in, I think he's very very creative. And I think Bruno could be one of the beneficiaries of getting more in open play, particularly if United persist with I suppose it depends on the formation, but I think if Pogba's not in the picture, that could help Bruno as well. So for me, no other player has got more points than Bruno since he's joined the game. And expected points for last season, I think he was either first or second. I haven't wavered on Bruno at all.
Okay.
And if anything, he might have, he might have been a bit tired at times, and he's had a little bit of a break by going out at the Euros a little bit earlier. But I actually think the Salah Fernandes captaincy rotates really nicely, because looking at it, you've got Salah obviously against Norwich, but then to be fair, Bruno against Leeds isn't a bad shout. So you've got two great options there. Salah against Burnley, perfect. Again, Bruno against Southampton, isn't a bad VC. I think Bruno against Wolves is probably the best captaincy option that week. I think Wolves will attack more. I think they'll be quite exciting this year. And I think we've got to get rid of our preconceptions of Wolves being really solid defensively. I'm not sure that will transpire this year.
Agree.
So I think away at Wolves could be a good fixture for Bruno. Home to Newcastle, perfect. Then Salah against Palace. And
you're talking me into all these things, Adam. It's very.
I just, for me,
we swapped roles.
When I wildcarded last year, sometimes I think wildcarding, and I also do think the start of the season, it's about giving yourself a flexible base to move away from and to be flexible. And I can't see an argument not to go for Bruno at the moment. No. And there are a few statistical arguments that people will look at, but he's the sort of player that just gets points. He's gravitate over a long period of time. He gravitates towards points. United get a lot of penalties. I actually think he's quite a good captaincy option, because I think United against Leeds will be quite high scoring on the first game of the season. So I think he's a good captaincy option as well, if you wanted to go away, if you're brave enough to go away from Salah.
I actually had a message off Andy Green, so at FPL Fantasy Guy, just before we came on, actually, to say that he looked at some stats. I'm sure he said that Leeds have the worst XGA. I'm not sure if he said of all teams away from home all season, or something along those lines. So
they've got a few. By the looks of it, you probably want to watch your space with Leeds, because I think they've got a few injuries for defenders in pre-season. And
Calvin Phillips hasn't played yet either, has he, since the Euros? I don't.
Yeah, and that's making me think. We were talking about Jotter and Greenwood earlier. I'm leaning towards Greenwood now as a really good option, and it'll make that Leeds game quite a big one, particularly if I go in there with Bruno, Rafinha, Greenwood, and Shaw. Might be a bit overkill, but
okay, we'll touch on Greenwood et al. Now. It has just been an update from Chris in the chat. Thank you very much, Chris. Lukaku has requested Inter accept an offer from Chelsea. Also mentions Grealish to have medical at City, and Ings cost around 25 million. So you did guess 30 million, didn't you, Adam? Pre-stream, so you weren't too far off.
I was around, yeah. So basically, hopefully that means we've got a little bit of change from Ings, Bailey,
plenty
and
of change, mate. I think, blimey,
for Grealish, indeed. Which, I'm quite happy with that.
Okay, so moving on to midfielders again, we've got expected points for the last 9 game weeks. Of last season. So Salah came out top, 7.4. Tell you who's second, and this was one for me which I'm waiting on, right? So Pereira from West Brom, he had the highest points, the actual highest FPL points for all midfielders in the final quarter of the season for a relegated team. I think that is absolutely incredible. And if he signs for West Ham, which is looking,
he's not, is he? I think he's.
Oh, I thought I read this morning he was. No,
I'm pretty sure, and I haven't caught up with everything today, and all my time's been dominated by Villa, if I'm honest. But I think he signed for a different team. I think he's going to. It wasn't anyone I recognised from the thing.
Not a Premier League team.
No. It's. I'll tell you who it is.
Well, he's off the table then. Blimey. After him, we had Mane, then Mount, Jotter and Greenwood tied on 5.8 expected points each. Bruno. So even though Bruno had a bit of a torrid, end to the season, his actual FPL points were 4.38 per game for the final 9. His expected points were higher, 5.5, above Pulisic, Son, and Harrison. While you find that, Adam, I just want to make my...
It might not be done actually, but a good source, if anyone doesn't follow him, probably do. So Fabrizio Romano has said Al Hilal are in advanced talks to sign Mateus Pereira. So there you go. So it's not looking as great for West Ham, which actually could be a good thing when we consider some of their players, because it might make them more nailed.
Well, I thought he would have been good, and I thought he would have actually, enhanced the chances of more goals for Antonio, for example, and things. But if he's not going, then that's gone. I just want to make my really, really brief argument for Mane, right? Can I just make a really brief argument? So, Mane versus Bruno. I appreciate you putting Bruno. I will probably go Bruno, right? So,
can I just for that? Someone's put in the chat. Ings was 30 million, not 25. There you go. And a bad guess, was it?
Been at one about.
Anyway, sorry. Just go back to your to your Mane versus Salah.
I need to kick someone out of the chat. I thought I'd done it. I thought I'd done it already. Sorry, 1 second. Apologies for this. Thought I'd kicked him out already. Got a spammer. It should be gone now. Apologies for that, everyone in the chat. Mane. So I was thinking this afternoon, and I saw a draft this afternoon when I was doing the live stream this afternoon, and it had Mane instead of Bruno. At first, I thought, oh, you haven't got Bruno, right? But he had Mane, and Liverpool. So it's probably fair to say that Mane plays, higher up the pitch than Bruno. He underperformed. He underperformed last season, but still scored a shed load of FPL points. His expected point at the end of the season was higher than Bruno's. I expect Mane to start off like a train. He's had a full pre-season. He looks happier, when you would see in his interviews and things, he said, oh, I didn't have a good one last year. I'm raring to go this season. It kind of means then that you can go for Greenwood or even Cavani, because you don't have to captain Bruno until game week 4, right? So you've got the 3 game weeks, then you've got the international break. In that time, you're not going to captain Bruno, or you'd be very, very brave to captain Bruno, right? So if you think that Mane and Bruno are actually kind of like for like, or you think that Mane is going to score more points, I do think there's an argument, especially if you're planning an early wildcard, if you're planning a game week 4 wildcard. So I think we all probably expect Kane to come in for City after the international break in game week 4. It's probably the time we're expecting to do it, right? Which coincides with then you can wildcard in game week 4, bring in Bruno, bring in Kane, and get rid of Mane then if you wanted to. But there's just an argument there when I saw it, and it's his ownership. Like under 4% owned. Sadio Mane. It's absolutely crazy, and the only reason his ownership does not reflect his FPL potential, I suppose, is the whole argument I'm saying here, right? It's absolutely crazy low ownership, and it's purely because everyone's on Salah. But I do think there's an opportunity there somewhere if you can be creative with your team. So I just have to get that out. It's been eating me up all day.
I get it. I do get it. And I'm sorry it's been eating you up. But you can tell your new celebrity friends at your after party tonight and have a chat with those guys. I think the problem is game week 3 where Chelsea play Liverpool and having Mane and Salah. So you're either booking in a transfer or you got 24 million tied up against a really, really tight defense. Then who do you captain that week? So that's my issue. I think all your points and all the stats are great. Everyone knows I'm a big Mane fan, and I think for flexibility reasons and captaincy reasons, I would go for him or Salah. And it's hard to make an argument for Mane over Salah, given they're so close in price.
No, you're right. I know you're right. That's the thing. I can't even hold the argument.
Do you know what? Go for both of them. You do it. You be a maverick. Go for it. You prove us all wrong.
I'm not going for it because I've been watching all the team reveals on this channel of all the incredible managers. We've got FPL General, Rich Clark, Heisenberg, Abdul. We've had some and they've all said the same thing. Just play it safe. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Just the same as you, obviously.
Have any of them gone Bruno-less at the moment?
Not at the moment. No, I think most of them have got the same kind of 8 or 9 because it's like I say, the way they've priced it is fairly obvious at the moment. The game, isn't it?
I don't think that's a bad thing. Sometimes you try too hard to be different.
Yes, I completely agree.
What will happen is in the next, after the first game week, everyone will start to go different paths. There'll be loads of opportunities that present themselves. So just give yourself a base setup. I wouldn't worry about trying to be too clever at this stage because we're doing it with no information as well. It's the hardest week of the season to predict anything. So I think just go with the tried and tested players and don't worry too much and pick a boring team is what I'm saying.
Rich Clark, he said something in his team reveal this week that really struck a nerve with me. And he said, patience is the 4th chip in FPL that is the least understood and the least effectively used. And I was like, he's just, and this.
Why if you'd have said that off air, I would have used that and passed it off at my own.
But it's all these great managers. They all play the same way. They all play the same way, and that's why they've got all these incredible ranks. I just want to chat briefly, Adam, about Greenwood and Jotter. So I heard a bit of news earlier around that Cavani may miss game week 1, and also that Firmino is going to start in a friendly tomorrow. So this is kind of flip. I've had Jotter in one of my drafts, and I haven't been that keen on Greenwood because I just find him a bit ineffective from an FPL view when he plays on the wing, a little bit like Rashford, right? But if Cavani misses game week 1, surely to goodness, I say surely to goodness, you would guess that Greenwood would definitely start, and he has even got a chance of starting as the number 9, right? And the fact now that if Firmino is back playing friendlies, it may mean that Jota may not start. So I've kind of flipped a little bit, and I'm a bit more interested in Greenwood now. We just look at the stats on screen, how they finished the season, the last 9 games of the season, incredibly similar in all areas. Jota just edges it on XG, big chances and touches. But bear in mind, Greenwood played on the right-hand side for a lot of that, whereas Jota was playing a lot more centrally. Where are your thoughts at the moment on Greenwood and Jota, or Greenwood versus Jota?
I do really like Jota, but there's and up until probably a couple of hours ago, I was probably favouring him because over the whole of last season for midfielders, I think he's the top expected points per 90. Stats-wise, he does really, really well. So, and when you watch him as well, he always, even if he doesn't start, he looks quite threatening coming off the bench. So I do think Jota is a really good player. I think he looked all right for Portugal as well. He's got that goal scoring instinct. But Firmino is a big concern. And when I look at the fixtures, okay, Norwich and Burnley are good fixtures, but then after they've got, Chelsea and Wolves? And if I look at Greenwood's first 4 fixtures, Rashford's having surgery, Martial there's concerns over, Cavani you've mentioned. So you think Greenwood will probably get decent minutes? And he got decent minutes when they played 3 times in a week.
He played. He was the only one who had minutes in all 3 games.
Yeah, and he's not had any international football as well over the summer. Another big tick for me.
Yeah, agree.
So I look at their fixtures: Leeds, Southampton. Leeds could concede a few. Southampton, I think United got a 3 there last season. Wolves, I don't expect them to be, as tight as they historically have been. I think they'll go for it. And then Newcastle at home. You don't really get, other than playing the promoted teams, you don't really get much better than that. And I think at 7.5 million, I think his expected points per 90 last season were 6.1 over the whole season. I think it'd have been better. I know we'll probably show the slide, won't we, in midfielders in a second, for the last 9 game weeks. But I'm leaning towards Greenwood, and I think if you look at all of the midfielders, probably 7.5 upwards that aren't Salah, Mane, maybe between 7.5 and 10 million. Son is probably going to lose Kane. You can lose some creativity, and he's got a City first game, so there's a question mark there. Who else is there? Havertz, tough fixtures, and there could be rotation.
Yep.
He only started 8 of the last 19 games. And Chelsea, if they sign Lukaku, that's another player to throw in there.
That's the
Mahrez.
That's the only reason why I've gone off Havertz, because I've been really, really sweet on Mahrez, because I really enjoy watching him play. He gets into such central scoring positions, Havertz, but Lukaku will just change that whole dynamic, right?
Yeah, of course he will. You then look at Mahrez. Now, a lot of people are hot on Mahrez, me included, and but the thing that I've thought is that a lot Man City, they'll play the Community Shield, they'll go strong against Spurs. If he's going to give minutes to players, it's going to be that Norwich game. It's got to be. It's common. That is the common sense approach. And I know you can say, "Oh, we can't guess Pep," but that could be one that Mahrez misses. So if you think, I think it's a hard fixture to target Man City because we don't know who's going to start. That particularly this early in the season, it will be Pep roulette. So when I'm looking at the players in and around that bracket, I do want to have a more expensive than a £6 million player. I think Greenwood and Jotter are the two that I like. And I think Greenwood has got everything. The fixtures, I think he'll play. He had a really good spell towards the end of last season. He didn't have international football, another big tick. Rashford's out. There's question marks over other players. And he's got the creativity on the other side of Jadon Sancho. So yeah, as well as Bruno, he's not too bad either. So I'm quite big on Greenwood now. I wasn't until today, and I was very much favouring Jota, but I've just had a chance to reflect and take away all my biases and look at things objectively, and that's where I'm at the moment.
No, it's good. And I.
What do you disagree?
No, I don't. I wasn't until I heard those 2 pieces of news earlier about Firmino back playing a friendly and Cavani maybe missing game week 1, and that has kind of flipped me more towards Greenwood. I've actually got, I'll show you later when I see my draft, I've actually got a 7.5 million hole in my midfield I couldn't choose a few hours ago on who to go for. A couple of other players to chuck in, Ferran Torres at 7 million. If Kane kind of if he takes his time, he could be one. If we get the hint, if Pep says ahead of game week 1 or game week 2, I'm going to give Torres a run out, 7 million striker against that, it could be decent. Harvey Barnes, I was quite sweet on Harvey Barnes a couple of days ago, but I've since had a little bit of a think, and while I think he'll do okay, I think the fact that Iheanacho is there and playing now, may disrupt that kind of rhythm that they had, because it was Maddison, Vardy and Barnes that were causing all the damage, wasn't it, when Barnes was playing really well. And also Barnes hasn't kicked a ball in a competitive match now since I think it was February, March. He got injured, so I'm not expecting him to shoot out of the blocks.
He's too risky to start.
Yeah, I do agree, but I do think he'll have a spell in the season where he is, because he was on fire. He was one.
Yeah,
I think both of us were thinking of getting him on for double game week 26. I think he got injured in 25 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Other kind of mid-price ones, Harrison and Rafinha, they've been talked to kind of death. I don't think there's much between them. Have you got a preference between the two of Harrison and Rafinha?
Rafinha. I would say after Salah, for obvious reasons, Rafinha is I think he was the second or third name on my team sheet, let alone he's just so good. His stats have been incredible. He's been unlucky not to get more points. I'm not put off by his fixtures because I think Leeds can score against anyone. I think Harrison is a great option to go alongside him. Just would you do it right at the start? With the being away at United, but I think maybe wildcard double Leeds mid, or Bamford or Rodrigo and Rafinha. But yeah, Rafinha's a no-brainer for me. I haven't even thought 1 second of taking him out because I think FPL have underpriced him. He should be 7.5 million at least. So I think 7.5 million will be a fair price. So and I think he's more expensive, isn't he, in FanTeam? Is that right? I think he's 7.5 in FanTeam.
Sorry, no, I don't know.
But I think that's always quite good to confirm a player is overpriced or underpriced. So I think Mane is cheaper in FanTeam, but so it's maybe been overpriced by FPL.
I need to make it.
But I think.
Oh, sorry, you go on, mate. Sorry.
But I think Rafinha's a no-brainer for me.
No, I agree. And again, listening to FPL Salah Abdul's team reveal on this channel a couple of days ago, he was just absolutely said the exact same things as you. He's an absolute no-brainer. Wouldn't be leaving. According to Bryce Sutcliffe, Jotter has become Jotter, making my skin crawl. Hard J. He's Portuguese, not Spanish. Apologies there, Bry. It is Jotter. I keep saying Jotter, but it is Jotter.
It is Jotter. Yeah,
Jotter.
I don't know
it's me. I think it's me, but
Villa had a Jotter. But it is Jota.
Big up to Chris Smith in the chat. He says, "Smash that like, folks! Nearly 600 in, and only 94 likes so far. That is good stuff. Good math. Come on, let's get a few more likes in there." Looking at some budget players, there's not that many in my opinion. I'll just firstly look at a couple of 6.5. So James Ward-Prowse, he seems to go under the radar every single season. He's 8% owned at the moment. I wouldn't start with him, right? Especially now Ings is not going to be there. But I do think over a season,
it probably means he's on penalties.
Yeah,
right?
he's rock solid, right? He's and he's very good on bonus as well because of it. All his passes and tackles he does as well. He is. I'm not going to start with him, but he's always in the back of my mind because he's just Mr. Consistent. You just leave him all season. Dele Alli is the other one, who at the moment is 1% owned. So he's 6.5 million. So he is in that kind of fourth midfielder range. He played as captain for Spurs last week, which I know he scored a goal, but it was the fact that he was made captain for me because if you remember a few years ago, Ali was like 9.5 million, and he was in everyone's team because he was absolutely sensational. Has he crossed your mind at all? I know he's a wait and see, but has he crossed your mind at all?
No, because he's a wait and see. That's
why.
I think maybe at some point in the season, maybe at wildcard stage, absolutely. But that Man City game puts me off, and he's flattered us to deceive really over the last couple of seasons. So he's an enticing price, but at the moment I'm not interested. There's a couple that have interested me. I think Mason Mount is an option, and I think irrespective of Chelsea's tough fixtures, I think he's the sort of player that could do well. He scored at Liverpool last year. I think in the tight games he does quite well, and I think his stats overall have been fairly impressive. So I think he's an option. Is he 7.5 or 7?
Sorry, who you mentioned?
Mason Mount.
I don't know.
I'll check now. I should say.
I don't know off the top of my head because
he's 7. He's 7.5.
Okay.
So I think he's a I probably prefer Greenwood at this stage, but I think over the season, Mount could be a good option because I think he's probably likely to be to play the most minutes of the Chelsea midfielders. And then there's a few other players that I like. You
dare say my player? You dare say him?
No, I'm not going to. I'll let you have that. Have the glory in that in a minute. I obviously guessed it straight.
You did guess it straight away.
But the one I really like side by Ben Rama, and he's more of a gut feel because I thought towards the end of last season, every time I watched West Ham, I thought he took some Lingard's limelight towards the end of the season, and he really passed the eye test for me. And I think it was tight. He took a while to get going because Villa were interested in him, and I think he took a while to get going. And then towards the end of the season, you could see what the fuss was about. He was quite an exciting player. He scored quite a few of his, he's got that trademark curling it in from the edge of the box. Very, very creative. And I think at 6 million, I haven't ruled out getting him at the start of the season because I think he would be the sort of punt I think you can take. He's quite exciting. He'll make it interesting, but he's not too expensive. So I think Ben Rama's one I like, and then I think Sar's okay. I think Sar's got potential at that price, but it's just I again with Watford, and if I'm going to go with Tony, I probably don't want to have too many players that have come up from the Championship.
Cool. Craig in the chat, FPL Chunks. He captained Fornals. I don't know if you remember, Adam, on the final day of last season when he got his brace, and I think he rose from like 350th to like 47th or 48th overall. He's high on Fornals. I do think Fornals at the end of the season, he is, and the reason that Craig brought him in is because his underlying attacking stats were better than Lingard's, Benrahma's, and everyone's, and that's the reason he brought him in using the Hub Opta stats. And what a move! That's one of the best moves I've ever seen, to bring in Pablo Fornals in the final game of the season and captain him when you had Mane and Salah and everyone else was absolutely incredible. A couple of other players, so I think Smith Rowe is probably the best 5.5 million midfielder. There's a lot being talked about with him, so I'm not going to go into it. But the one I like, and he's actually sat in my draft at the moment, and the Ings transfer has just made him even more in there. Let's see if anyone can guess in the chat who I've brought in. Let's just say the Ings transfer that happened this evening should benefit this midfielder that I'm going to bring in. Let's see if anyone...
I think they'll get it straight away.
They should do, I would guess. Let's take a look at forwards, Adam, in the meantime then. And if we just look at the expected points at the end of last season, Harry Kane, unsurprisingly, top of the shop expected points. Chris Wood, obviously, he finished. He has an absolutely incredible finish, didn't he, Chris Wood? 6.5. Iheanacho, I think he's going a bit under the radar. It's probably because of all these amazing players in this range of Wilson, Antonio, and Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, and Bamford, and Tony, and all this sort of thing. But Iheanacho. Benteke was up there. Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, and Vardy. A couple of people in the chat have got my player. There's a lot actually saying Buendia, but it's the other ones that are right. Nathan Teller is a 5 million Southampton midfielder who in pre-season I think he's got 2 goals and 2 assists, and he's 5 million. And the way I think about it is bring him in, stick him on the bench. Playing the long game now, obviously, right? So the plan is obviously not to wildcard early. But what you could find after a few weeks is you have a starting player for £5 million starting as a striker in your team, and Southampton's fixtures are not bad. Now, that's what I've got at the moment. It's obviously a week to go. I've taken out my 4.5 midfielder, which was Brownhill. I put Teller in there. But it's more of a stick him in the back pocket and just see what happens. It's like you plant him in your little planter, and then hopefully watch him grow. And because everyone else is scrabbling around with all these crappy 4.5s or whatever else, Nathan Teller just grows from his stalk into this budding superstar that helps me win FPL. That's the plan, Adam. What do you think?
No, it's not going to happen. I think I agree. He could end up becoming an option, and so I think that is possible. But the way that I see it is for your fifth. If he's going to be sitting on the bench, I think you're paying 0.5 too much. Is he going to be good enough? If you were based on all the other players that we've talked about, is he going to be good enough that you're going to want to start him, particularly in the first 3 game weeks?
Not in the first 3. Not in the first 3. I'm thinking longer term.
I'm not. But I think the problem is he's eating up that extra 0.5. And I just think for flexibility and wanting to jump on players, I don't think it's a good move, personally.
Well, what about this for flexibility then, Mr. Hopcroft? I can then change either my 3rd or 4th midfielder down to a 4.5, which then upgrades to, if he's starting every game, right? I'd play him. I'd play him because he's playing up front. So that then means I get a whole chunk of change from, for one of my other players to make those upgrades. Mr. Flexibility. What do you think about that?
Nah, I'm not having it. I think if it's, I think if you're going to start with him, I think if he's in your 11, absolutely fine. Well, I'm not convinced that he's absolutely fine based on the evidence we have so far. But it's if he's on your bench, you're putting more money into your bench, which ruins the flexibility of putting money into your starting 11. And I'm just not. I'm not
Not
convinced.
having it.
I think if he shows promise, I think if he shows promise, then you might bring him into your starting 11. You sub him in to upgrade another player, but the problem is if he then comes into your team from the bench, that means you've got 8 playing attackers. You're gonna have rotation headaches. You're not gonna have the maximum amount of money in your first 11. I'm not. I'd be surprised if you start with him. I'd be very surprised.
Okay. We'll see.
If you go with him and Martinez, you've probably lost about
Lost the plot.
1.5 million to throw into your starting 11 extra. So that's my counter argument. He could end up being a baller, and everybody wants to go there. We'll see.
You mark my words. By Christmas, Nathan Teller will be the name on everyone's lips.
Yeah, do you know what he could be? But I'm not saying I wouldn't get him. What I'm saying is that as an 8th attacker, I'm not sure I would want him, because I don't know if people that had Souček last year, because Souček was 5 million at the start, the amount of times that people probably had points on the bench, I think you've got to decide to start a player like that or not, particularly with my luck. I mean, the amount of bench points I dodged. So I would, I'm not as sold on that strategy. I think he's a good spot, and he could be a really cheap player for the starting 11. And he actually looked good at the bits that I saw of him last season. Nice, he actually looked quite good.
And I know that Southampton fans rate him very, very, very highly as well. They think it's going to be his breakout season, right? So I'm not just doing it because of a pre-season goal or two. Right, let's look at forwards, Adam. Obviously Kane is top of the shop, right? But he's very, very likely to miss the first 2 or 3 games of the season. Likely. Lukaku, I mean, who knows? The one I like, and I just can't get, because I don't really want a double up, but Edison Cavani for me looks quite. He's 15% owned, but he looks a bit under the radar for me. Cavani. It's just, again, because everyone, it's the same as Mane, right? Everyone's sidelined by the premium. And just for everyone, who hasn't, everyone who joined us late, Adam was incredibly excited about Danny Ings signing for Aston Villa at the start of the stream. We literally had the news 5 minutes before we came on air, and Adam came on grinning like a Cheshire cat, and then I realised what had happened, and absolutely fantastic news. Who of the strikers excites you most, Adam? Who gets your coffee frothing?
Easy, Danny Ings. No, I think I think it's quite tough, because at the moment we don't have the full information. There's talk of Lukaku, there's talk of Kane, and that would definitely make things more interesting. Yeah. Kane moving, or at least returning to training, and obviously Lukaku going to Chelsea. So that would make things more interesting. I think there's a lot of excitement in the community. I don't know, maybe excitement's the wrong word, between the 8 million to 7.5 million bracket. There's probably about 5 or 6 forwards within that bracket: Ings, Bamford, Calvert-Lewin, Antonio, Watkins, Wilson. So there's probably 6 that a lot of considering at the moment in that bracket. So you could quite easily have a couple of players in that bracket and swap them. The one that's nailed at the moment for me is Antonio, because I look at his stats across last season, and I think he probably should have scored more. But I just think he's key for West Ham. There's a few question marks about Villa with Watkins and Ings at the moment. I don't really want to go with the Newcastle striker, and I think maybe Calvert-Lewin and Bamford might just be a little bit 0.5 too expensive for me to squeeze in. So I think Antonio's the one that I would go for. I like Tony as well. I just think there's usually always a good striker that comes up from the Championship. And as much as I think Brentford might go back down, I'm sure they're going to score goals. And if they score goals, it's going to be Tony, isn't it? He's the perfect talisman. So I'm looking at the moment, it will probably be Antonio because of fixtures, Tony plus one other. And based on today's news, I'm thinking I'm going to have to try and find an extra 0.5 squeeze a certain Mr. Ings in.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at the moment.
So where I'm at, I got the 4.5 on the bench at the moment because I'm trying. Remember we had our kind of end of season review, and I came up with a few things which worked for me about how I manage my team and my. In the season review, I scored on average, it was some ridiculous, like 20 points extra on average per week when I only played the two up front from last season. And when I've had my better seasons before, I've done the same thing. I've just had a 4.5 striker hidden on the bench and plugged all my money and time and effort into, back four and either 4 or 5 in midfield. So at the moment, I'm on Watkins and Tony, right, which is cheap. I think it's a toss-up between Watkins and Antonio. With this news, you got to think if Ings doesn't start in game week 1, that would only fire Watkins up more, right? To try and and say, hang on a minute, I'm the main manager. I'm the one scoring the goals. So that does concern me a little bit. But I agree with you on Antonio. He's out my team at the moment only because I slightly preferred Watkins. But I am thinking of going back to Antonio potentially. His ownership, Watkins' ownership, kind of scares me a little bit as well. But I haven't got anyone above that at the moment. And it's hard to get excited, right? Even that and they're all much of a muchness. And it's you can look at stats, you look at preseason, but all these players we just mentioned: Bamford, Calvert-Lewin, Wilson, Antonio, Ollie Watkins. To me, it's flick a coin. It's so hard to say who which player or two players are going to score the most points or going to offer the most value because they're all so close. So I'm really struggling.
That's why I think you have one or two in that bracket. I think I was going to go 3-5-2 and I haven't decided yet. And I do think there's a lot of good midfield options, but I think if Lukaku comes to Chelsea for flexibility reasons, and the same with Kane, it could be good to go for 3 up top because then you've got a couple of options to maybe do Bruno or whoever to a striker. If you've only got 2 strikers, it could mean that and one of them's Tony, you have to get rid of your Antonio, your Calvert-Lewin, or whoever you've got in that spot, and you might fancy keeping them, or you're going to have to do that transfer where you get rid of your 4.5 million striker and change the structure. So I think at the moment I'm leaning towards 3-4-3 because I think the striker move is easier to do if you've got a 3-4-3. And I actually think whilst if the probably the good thing with Bamford, Wilson, Watkins, Ings, etc., those type, Antonio, is they probably will get decent minutes. Whereas some of the midfielders like your Greenwood, your Jotters, your Havertz's, your Mahrez's, you've got, whilst they might not have the same expected points. Well, in fact, actually, the expected points aren't too bad, but in fact, in cases better. But you've got that rotation factor, and so I'm probably leaning towards a 3-4-3 at the moment. But that will probably change. That will change on wildcard when the season has taken toll. But I think it's the most flexible, and it guarantees me a playing sub. As a 4.5 million midfielder, so to get me the extra 2 points, or whereas you won't have that with a striker. Not that would be a big factor, but I think it's that flexibility factor of if I want Lukaku, if I want Kane, I don't have to ditch my Antonio or whoever or Calvert-Lewin, whoever it is. I've got other options.
You're just making too much sense tonight, Adam. It's killing me. It's killing me because everything you're saying to me is making me just go that way, and also just a thought just occurred to me there, right?
Yeah.
we're thinking of Greenwood and Jotter, as you say, right, and all these kind of
Yeah.
players. You could just have Antonio. It's for for the same. It costs exactly the same. You could just and Antonio is playing up. He's playing up front. He's more like to play every game. He's more like to play every minute. Yeah. I'll try for another bloody rethink, but yeah, good stuff. Anything else on the on the strikers? I think
no. I think I think there's some good options, and there's some good talismanic options, and I think Iniacho looked good at the end of last season, but I think there's doubts as to who will start up front for Leicester, so that puts me off. I think Chris Wood, who you mentioned, has been at the Olympics.
Yeah.
As a cheap option, and I'm not going to do this, but I think Jay Rodriguez at 5.5 million's had quite a good pre-season by all accounts. So he could be, if you want to sign a Burnley striker and you're desperate to do so and have 5.5 million left, go for it. But I think for me, I think there's some okay options in the striking category this year.
Harvey Barnes has just scored for Leicester after saying that he's not match fit and he's going to take time to get him back. And it looks like Bertrand might have a couple of assists as well, which is quite interesting because he could be on set pieces. That is something to keep an eye on. Blimey, if you've got another set piece taking fullback starting for a top side, but to see about that.
I think with Leicester, I think Barnes could end up being a great option, but they've just got with signing Daco, and they've got in Iniacho, Vardy, Madison still, Barnes. There's a lot of options there, and you just I'm not sure. I think I'll wait and see on Leicester. Okay. I think Leicester would definitely be in my thoughts, probably wildcard time.
Just finally, we did have a question in the chat about Calvert-Lewin. I'm just like struggling to separate him from this pack. Right? I think it's very hard for me to just say, I would go for Calvert-Lewin above X, Y, and Z. I just think with that pack of players, you just need to pick the one or two or even three who you think are going to do well, because Calvert-Lewin or Bamford, I mean, they're much of a muchness, right? So I've got the stats up now on screen for Antonio versus Watkins for the last quarter of last season. They're kind of nigh on identical. Watkins just outscores Antonio, but there's nothing in it. Wilson came out last week, didn't he? Kind of slagging out the old Newcastle offensive coaching regime, and said the second half season, look what happened when we changed coaches and stuff. We haven't mentioned Ivan Toney either. I'm assuming we haven't mentioned him because we just think he's such a good option. He's definitely in my team.
I don't know if he's such a good option, but the way that I'm thinking about it at the moment, because Brentford could be the whipping boys of the season, and they may struggle because they haven't really invested. So it could be a bit like Norwich the season before last. So I do worry a little bit about Brentford, but he is a goal scorer. I think he's a million cheaper. He's on pens. He's a talisman. I think he's worth the gamble. That's my thought process at the moment. He'll play 90 minutes. So I think he's worth it at that. The one thing that I would say, and this is a bit of a theme, I think, it's really hard to guess 11 of the right players at the start of the season. Exactly. What you can do is give yourself the best position to react, and I think that's what you have. So that's why maybe having 2 7.5 million strikers is quite good, because it's very easy then to go, for example, Bruno and Antonio to Greenwood and Lukaku, or Greenwood and Kane. Quite an easy move to do. You can do it in 2 moves if you wanted to flip that around. But then also that could mean you get to keep your other 7.5 million striker in, whoever that might be, Watkins, etc. But there's 5 or 6 players around that price point that could all start the season well. So again, it's just really, okay, well, he's not done what I thought he would do. I'll swap him to Wilson or whoever. So I just think you just want to make your life as easy as possible to switch players around. It's hard to predict who will do well, but give yourself the best possible opportunity to react. And that's all thinking. That's how I'm seeing the start of the season at the moment.
Adam Hopcroft, you are on fire tonight. I've never heard you. You always talk sense, but I've never
It's a new
heard you talk.
microphone.
It is the new microphone. It's turned.
I said loads of great stuff last week, but nobody could hear me.
Exactly. Brilliant. Okay, so we now have your draft up on screen, Adam. It hasn't changed much from last week.
It hasn't changed since last week. You've used the same
one. Do
you
just want to talk us through your current thoughts?
Yeah, of course. It's changed. My thought process has changed a little bit with Ings. I'm not going to lie on that. But the idea at the moment is I can probably throw Luke Shaw in there as well. So that's one less place to worry about. So at the moment, my locked players are a Sanchez and a 4 million keeper, Trent, Luca Dean, and I think Luke Shaw is locked at the moment with at least one 4.0 defender. I've put in Johnson. That could be Manquillo. It could be whoever is 4 million. I've then got Salah, Bruno, and Rafinha completely nailed, and I've got Antonio and Tony completely nailed. So that really leaves 4 spots left in my team, which I need. I need a defender. So if I wanted to go 4-4-2, I could go for someone like Soufal or Diaz or Chilwell. But I think it's realistically going to be a 4.5 or 4 million defender. And then I need to decide, do I want to go 3-5-2 or 3-4-3? I'm probably leaning more towards 3-4-3. So I think it works out if I went for a 4.5 million defender and a 4.5 million midfielder or striker for those 2 spots, I've got 15 million to spend for 2 spots. So if I went for Ings, that leaves 7 million, which I was quite hot on Greenwood, so that's not ideal. So maybe then I'd have to gamble on a 4 million defender and have no first sub if I went for Ings and Greenwood. If I went for Greenwood and Wilson, that would be perfect on the budget. Alternatively, I could go for the likes of Havertz and Greenwood. That would work? No, in fact, it takes me over.
Yeah.
So I could Havertz and Buendia draft after draft after draft, because I just think we've already seen things have changed dramatically just today with Grealish and with Ings, with news on Lukaku potentially wanting to move. So I'm waiting until the final week before making any more decisions. I particularly want to see the final friendlies, the Community Shield. So then I'll start thinking about the final team. But what you'll probably notice from my team at the moment, yeah, it's pretty template, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I think it's about getting a good setup to start the season. But hardly any of them have played European football in the summer.
Yeah.
Or if they did, they came home early, or didn't see it through. So they've had enough time back in training. And I think that's really important for the start of the season, because the ones that are just coming back this week are going to be playing a little bit catch up on fitness and sharpness, I think. So, or they might get their minutes managed at the start of the season because they've had quite an intense summer. So that's my thought process at the moment. Fairly set. I've got there's no tinkering in my mind or anything like that. It is very boring, I know, but I don't see this as the exciting bit. The exciting bit for me is the moving away from this, reacting to the players that are the value picks early on. So this is actually quite a bit boring, a boring part. Get my team set up where I can react quickly, and then the exciting part is game weeks 2, 3, 4, where I might even end up wildcarding in game week 4 just to put myself ahead of everyone else with really go into the value. So yeah, this is where I am at the moment.
Okay, so just to confirm, Adam's team, which he's got Sanchez and Foster, Alexander-Arnold, Luca Dean, Salah, Bruno, Rafinha, Antonio, and Tony, and he's got a bunch of gaps. So that's just for our podcast listeners there. I just want
to give people a chance by not picking 4 or 5 players.
Hey, that's what it is. Give them a chance to get some points. Just a bit in the chat, which is quite interesting. So a couple of Arsenal fans have said Aubameyang looks terrible in pre-season, which is quite interesting. And Bertrand, as we mentioned earlier, has had 2 assists, and he looks to be on set pieces for Leicester, so definitely one to monitor. And Yusuf says Wolves look super attacking. I think they're going to score tons of goals this year, so it may be worth just looking at Wolves, I think from game week 4 onwards, their fixtures are really good. So players like, maybe Jimenez, if he's back, and another 7.5 option there, it could be.
And that I agree with you. And that gives you the flexibility again. A few people have mentioned Saka not being discussed in the chat. I think Saka, I think Pepe, I think Smith Rowe are all good options. But are you going to start with them?
You're not going to start with
them.
Not
with Chelsea and Man City. This will probably come into the game week 4 chat. So it's not that I don't think they're good options. I do, but just not yet.
I'm pretty sure our kind of international break pod will be right. Look at all these, incredible options. As we look forward, much more kind of medium to longer term. So now my current draft on screen, and at the moment I've got Martinez in goals. I've got Luca Dean, Alexander-Arnold, and Shaw. I think the both of us said they're incredibly boring picks, but they're boring for a reason, is that they look like they just offer amazing value. I like Soufal. At the moment, Soufal is in my team at 5 million. I know you mentioned him earlier. You preferred him to Creswell, and I've got the 4 million defender there. So I've got the option there of benching Soufal or playing him. I have got Bruno and Sarr at the moment. I've got Rafinha. I've got Teller in there at the moment as my 5th midfielder, and then I've got Watkins and Tony up front. Not sure about Watkins. Obviously, I do like Antonio, and I'm not sure now whether I was tossing up between Watkins and Antonio, and I think that Ings move may just move me on to Antonio, and Keenan Davis, obviously as my 3rd one there. So I've got Jotter. I had Jotter. I had Jotter in that hole for that 5th midfielder. Not 5th midfielder, but 4th, no, even 3rd midfielder spot there. But I do have 8.5 million in the bank, and I've just kind of I'm tossing up. I've had Mahrez in there because I obviously had Teller down to a 4.5. I've had Havertz in there. I have had a 6.5 in it and upgraded Soufal to Chilwell or Diaz, because I would ideally like to have a Man City player. But again, I don't know if I'm just trying to be a bit too clever and just, I could just chuck in a 4.5 up there, upgrade Teller to Smith Rowe or Buendia or something, and just get Antonio or Wilson and do that. So again, really, really, really boring. But Martinez and Teller, as you pointed out earlier, are my kind of players which are quite different from a lot of the drafts that we've seen. But we will see. That's where I'm at the moment. There's there's still 9 days to go.
Do you know? I've been looking at the wrong team because of the slides you sent me earlier. You had
I had the old. I said I sent you the old one. Apologies. Yeah, I changed it just before.
Fine. It's fine. Yeah, no, it's fine if you want. That's. I'm just about to go in on Mahrez and all of that. Mahrez is, on serious note, is a good option, but obviously comes with an element of risk. Yeah, I mean, I like your team, and I think my only thing would be would be I'm not keen on Teller, but we'll see. I mean, he's apparently starting up front tonight. I think somebody said in the chat, so we'll see on that.
So yeah, it's difficult, right? Because we've got like 8 or 9 very, very template, very high on, very obvious picks.
Yeah.
All this conversation is around these like 2 spots in it, right? This 3rd striker or 5th midfielder or whatever else, and
but that's what you've just done there is you've simplified the problem, if you like. Your problem is quite simply, I've got 2. If you decide on your formation, it might be you've got 3 spots. You have to have a 4.5 million player for because if you think of it, if you're going to go 4-4-2, 3-5-2, or 3-4-3, one of those spots is going to be a 4.5 million player, assuming you want a bench player. And then whatever funds you've got left, you've got to split between two players, and you can have a mess around with the combination of 3 players. So what let's look at a 4.5 million defender, and then I've got 15 million left for 2 attackers. Or I think that's the the way to do it, rather than, because if you've got your draft on the screen, you're looking at a lot of different players, a lot of different positions. Keep it simple. Have your nailed players. That's why I've done my squad as it is. It's not to be awkward. It's to show these are my nailed. My problem is to try and get maybe two attacking players for 15 million, and I can look at, do I go for Mahrez and Sarr, or do I go for maybe a little bit more players that I probably trust a little bit more, and go with maybe Greenwood and Ings, or whoever it would be. So
I think what we'll probably find as well is all the points from all these combinations of players will probably end up being much for muchness anyway, right? Because they're all, the kind of reason it's so hard to pick is because they're all so even. And if it's one player we're talking about, if it is Mahrez, Mahrez could score he could get a goal and assist or a couple of goals. But if you're going for Mahrez and Sarr against another two really good picks, those other two could match Mahrez's points if Sarr blank. So it's very tough.
It's just hard. It's hard to predict at this part of the season, and that's why don't beat yourself up if you get it wrong, because I don't think anybody properly knows. The start of the season usually is the most difficult to predict. All I would say is, if you think of the start of last season, you had Martial and Sterling, who finished the previous season on absolute fire, getting hat tricks, being the top scorers. And then look at the season they had last season. Throw Mane into the mix as well. So you've got three players that finished really strong the season before, but didn't really do it last season. So that's why it's so difficult to predict what is going to happen. Everything I've said about Bruno, it could be that United get no penalties because referees actually referee football properly, rather than giving United soft penalties. And you don't know, do you? It's really, really difficult. Aubameyang was another one that everyone was hot on last season, and it didn't happen for him. So I just think it's hard to get it right. So you have to be flexible and have a way to get out of your to change your players quickly. And that's why I wouldn't overthink about, because you could
A or B. You just agonize for hours, can't you?
You will agonize for hours, but I think maybe come up with some criteria, look at the fixtures, look at the stats, and think, do you know what? I'm going to go with this person, and don't beat yourself up if you get it wrong, because it's, again, you go in with, there's so many unknowns. If you look at the teams with the new managers as well, someone's just mentioned Jimenez. Jimenez could be an absolutely on fire at the start of the season. We just don't know. Benitez has gone in at Everton, new manager thing. You've talked about Callum Wilson with the new coach at Newcastle. I think he came in sort of halfway through, didn't he, last season, and had a positive impact. Obviously, we don't know about Ings and Watkins. I've said my opinion on it, on how they're set up, but we just don't know. So there's so many unknowns at the moment. Who takes West Ham's penalties is another thing. I could guess, but I don't know for certain if Noble's not on the pitch, which is probably unlikely to be. So there's all these factors that we just don't know. But 3 or 4 matches in, we possibly will know. And that's why I think game week 1 to game week 3, you get so much, or 3 or 4, you get so much information. And that's why, wildcarding to get the value, to get on the players who, and to attack the trends isn't a bad idea.
Fantastic stuff, Adam, and a lesson for me for sure. And I'm sure that it resonates with many of our viewers and listeners as well. Okay, so for this evening, we've just got a few bits to share. We've run a couple of pieces of important news. I did mention at the start, but I'll mention it again now. So, firstly, from next week, we have colluded with Black Box, and we will now stream on a Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. every week to avoid a clash, and try and make sure that those who enjoy both can watch both live and interact and join in with both live. So that will be from next week. Also, the 2021 Football Content Awards nominations are now open. If you enjoy our podcast or our stream and our site content at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk and could spare a minute of your time, we would very much appreciate it if you could nominate this podcast in the Best Fantasy Football Podcast category, and also for Fantasy Football Hub in the Best Editorial category. The links are in the description below for anyone who's watching on YouTube. We'd really appreciate if you just click on it. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute end to end. And for podcast listeners, the link is footballcontentawards.com/voting. It would be very, very much appreciated. If you haven't seen, I've been going live every day at 3 p.m. British time, rating teams and doing Q&As, and we'll continue to do so every single day up until the deadline next Friday, the 13th of August. So I've done 3 so far. I've got another, 1, 2, I've got another 9 to go, I think. Pop in if you have the time. It's really good fun. I give everyone's team a good going over, and I share my latest daily draft too, which is why maybe I get myself into a bit of a muddle here with my team. Make sure you join our FPL podcast mini league. There will be a Fantasy Football Hub goodie bag prize and free premium membership for first place. The league code is QDASZ2. I'm just going to pop that in the chat very quickly, and the auto join link is below in the description too. That is it from us for this week. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought for your game week 1 teams. And Adam Hopcroft, absolute masterclass there. Adam, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Insightful and brilliant as always. Where can people get hold of you?
On Twitter, Hopcroft13.
Okay, and what we'll do next week, we'll try and get everyone. So every time you talk into the mic, we'll try and get everyone to give a like on the stream. So hopefully we'll get loads of likes then. We'll force you to talk into your mic more. Thank you so much for everyone watching on stream live. Thank you so much to everyone who will watch it back. Thank you so much to everyone who has listened, for taking the time to spend your Wednesday evening with us two chaps chatting FPL. Absolutely brilliant as always. We really, really appreciate it. My Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergie. So this podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please press like. It would be absolutely brilliant if you could just take that second to press like as well. And remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you enjoyed the podcast, please just give it 5 stars and pop in a comment. It really, really does help us and be much appreciated. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Green Arrow. So make sure you drop us a follow. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, points predictions tools, and much, much more, including the Opta stats and comparison tools, which we demoed this evening on stream. To join the tens of thousands of other fantasy managers and sign up to the Hub, choose all our amazing resources, click the top link in the description below. You will not regret it, we promise. We'll be back next week for our final pre-season podcast, no doubt making sweeping changes as the transfer window blows our teams and plans to pieces. Stay safe and may all your arrows be green. Good night all.